Welcome, race fans, to Pump the Brakes, the one, the only, the Cadillac of Formula One podcast. I'm your host, the Pit Lane Patriot, and we have a jam-packed show this week. We are breaking down everything from the Austrian Grand Prix. George Russell, Max Verstappen, Kimi Antonelli, Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari, McLaren, the whole grid. We are going to get into it. And then we turn the page and look ahead to one of the crown jewels of Formula One, Silverstone, the British Grand Prix. But first, before we get to the podium, before we talk about Russell winning the race, Verstappen fighting, Antonelli on the podium, Ferrari slipping backwards, McLaren doing McLaren things, we are ripping a Band-Aid off early here. Team Cadillac and Colton Herta in Formula 2 had their worst weekend of the season. There, I said it, done, ripped off the Band-Aid. Cadillac's worst weekend has arrived. Now breathe. Don't panic. Don't throw the flag in the garbage. Do not rip the stickers off the Cadillac hat. We are not doing that here. This is Pump the Brakes. The whole point of this is in the name. We pump the brakes, we look at the facts, we take the emotion, respect it, and then we put it in context. And yes, as Cadillac fans, this weekend hurt a lot. This was the kind of weekend where you see the upgrade package come in and you hear the optimism, you hear people talk about progress, you start to think, okay, maybe this was the weekend where we see a little jump. Maybe not points yet, maybe not Q3, but maybe we see a real step toward the midfield. And then Austria said, nope, not today, buddy. Not today. Cadillac came into the Red Bull ring with what was described as a serious upgrade package. It was new parts, new hope, a new test. And honestly, Austria was always going to be a real test. It's a short lap. I mean, the gaps are really tiny. It's very high speed. It's physical. And this year it was ridiculously hot. This was not some gentle little Sunday drive through the Austrian hills. It was a stress test. And for Cadillac, that stress test kind of became a stress fracture. So Friday gave us the warning signs. The team had issues in practice. Sergio Perez lost the running. Valtteri Bottas had problems. The team was already in problem-solving mode before we even got to qualifying, just in practice. Then qualifying came, and it was rough. Checo Perez qualified in 19th. Valtteri Bottas qualified in 20th. No excuse here. It was rough. Now, I will be fair here. They were not 3 seconds away from the next car. They were not completely lost away in another universe. There were signs that the car was not as hopeless as the final positions made it look. But this is Formula One. Timing sheet does not care about almost. Timing sheets do not care about there might be pace in there. Timing sheets say P19 and P20, and that blows. When you start P19 and P20 as a new team, you're already asking for a difficult Sunday. You're in dirty air, you're around chaos, you're trying to survive the opening lap, you're trying to use strategy just to get yourself into the conversation. But Cadillac did not even get the chance to have that conversation. Bottas was out after 2 laps. Perez was out after 4. Double DNF in the race in the opening laps. Absolutely brutal. There's no way to sugarcoat this. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it was just part of the process and then wave a little American flag over the wreckage like everything's fine, because it's not. This is the worst case version of a development weekend. You bring upgrades, you need data, you need race laps, you need cooling data, you need tire data, brake data, straight line data, and pit wall data. And instead, both cars are done before the race even got settled. It's not just a bad result, that's like lost information. And for a new team, information is currency. We've said this before on this podcast. Every single lap matters. All the data matters. Every lap teaches the engineer something. Every lap teaches the driver something. Every lap teaches the strategy team what tools they have on Sundays. So when both cars are basically out right away, you lose the race result and you lose the learning opportunity. And that's why this one stings. That's why this weekend was so bad. We didn't even get enough laps in for true data on the weekend, which is what we're really seeking. Now, this does not mean that the project is bad. It was a bad weekend. Bad weekend for a brand new Formula One team is not the same thing as a failed Formula One team. Cadillac is still in year one. Still learning what their car does. Still learning real race conditions, real heat, real traffic, real pressure, and real consequences, as they saw this past weekend in Austria. This is the part of Formula One that looks ugly. This is the part when we're standing on the podium one day that we're going to look back on and we're going to say, wow, I remember when our tires were on fire.
My brakes are on fire.
Copy that. So you can see fire physically if that's the case.
Yes.
We need to box.
Yeah, that wasn't fun. And this is not the part that makes the official hype video in a championship. This is the part of Formula One that looks ugly. It's the part where the engineers do not get dramatic music or slow motion walkthroughs in their garage or any sort of montage. This is the part where somebody has to stare at the data until 2 o'clock in the morning, break curfew as they did this past weekend, and figure out why this car could not survive. And that is Formula One. So as fans, where do we go from here, right? Well, we watch the response. I'm not looking for Cadillac to magically become Mercedes next week because I'm not asking for Perez and Bottas to roll into Silverstone and put the car on the second row. That's fantasy, especially given that there's no break between Austria and Silverstone. What I'd like to see and what I think we should all want to see is some problem solving. Can they identify what went wrong given the short break? Can they keep the car alive? Can they turn upgrades into usable performance? Can they give both drivers a clean Friday, a clean qualifying, and a race where they actually see the checkered flag? Because after Austria, a clean weekend at Silverstone would not be boring. Clean weekend at Silverstone would be progress. And that's where we as Cadillac fans kind of are. We're not grading this like a championship team. We're grading it more like a new team that's trying to become a real team. But I also want to be honest, being new does not mean you get infinite excuses. There's a difference between patience and denial. This was a bad weekend. Cannot deny that. But it is year one development, and development is hard. Growing pains are real. Double DNF after 2 and 4 laps is not fine. Starting 19th and 20th is not fine. We need to start getting out of that first quarter. And for Colton, our F2 development driver, our Cadillac American driver in waiting, this was also a bad weekend. And Colton is not where he should be so far this season. He has not performed well in F2 thus far, and in Austria, he placed in the back again. He had an okay free practice, and then in both the sprint and in the real race, he had poor results. And that's not acceptable. I want to see way more out of him in Silverstone. He's got to start competing for podiums. He's a 9-time IndyCar race winner. I want to see him competing for podiums with children in F2. And the last bit of news on the Cadillac front, Cadillac has revealed online the special edition livery for the Silverstone Grand Prix. And it looks awesome. They went full on American flag. It's 4th of July weekend. It says USA on the back. It'll be very visible on the track. But I want to see more than just a livery. I want to see more changes to this car. I want to see it continue to progress. Now, without further ado, let's go over the race results from the Austrian Grand Prix.
The Austrian Grand Prix is underway. It's a decent launch off the line for Charles Leclerc, but
Okay, so the headline is simple, and I say this very proudly. George Russell delivered. This was not a stolen win. This was not a lucky win. This was not, the race fell into his lap. No, George Russell put the Mercedes on pole, controlled the start, managed the race, and then had to deal with Max Verstappen hunting him down at the end. And that matters because when we talk about George Russell, I think sometimes people still talk about him like he's a promising young driver trying to prove he belongs. No, we're way past that. George Russell was a Grand Prix winner. George Russell was in the championship fight, and Austria was the kind of drive that says that I am not just another Mercedes driver. I am not just another teammate in the car. I'm a problem. And he had to be clean because Verstappen was coming. So that brings us to headline number 2. Max Verstappen reminded everybody that even when Red Bull is not the fastest car, he is still Max Verstappen. He started in 5th. He had the crash in qualifying, so the weekend could have gotten away from him pretty easily. But once the race settled, there he was, fighting Lewis Hamilton, which if you get a chance, look that up. There's drone footage of the fight between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen, and it looks awesome. If you know anyone that thinks watching Formula 1 is boring, show them that video. So yeah, you had Max fighting Lewis Hamilton, climbing through the front group, putting pressure on Russell late, and finishing second. Only about a second and a half behind George Russell, by the way. It's a very Max Verstappen result, especially at home at the Red Bull Ring. It's the type of result where you look at the car, you look at the weekend, and you look at the circumstances, and you say, I probably shouldn't have been a P2. But it was a P2. And that's what elite drivers, they drag results out of weekends that could have easily been way worse. And for Red Bull, that's encouraging because even if they are not the controller this season, like the old Red Bull days, they're still alive every weekend Max is in that car. Okay, third headline, Kimi Antonelli still leaves Austria as a championship leader, but that was not a perfect weekend. Third place is still a podium, very good. Fastest lap is still a statement, and after 8 rounds, he still has a 40-point lead in the Drivers' Championship, which is very good. So nobody needs to cry for Kimi Antonelli. But this is also a weekend where you saw the rookie side a little bit. He had moments where looked like it was getting a little messy. He ran wide early. Qualifying didn't fully come together the way it looked like it might after practice. And in the race, he was close enough to Verstappen at the end that it makes you wonder what could have happened if the whole weekend had just been a little cleaner. But again, perspective. We're talking about a rookie who finished 3rd, took fastest lap, and still leads the championship by 40 points, and he's not even 20. That's just insane. So if this is the bad version of an Antonelli weekend, the rest of the grid has a serious problem. Fourth major headline, Ferrari let one get away. And I don't mean that they were supposed to win the race. I don't think Austria was Ferrari's race to dominate. When Charles Leclerc starts 2nd and Lewis Hamilton starts 3rd, and they finish 8th and 5th, that's a disappointing Sunday. Hamilton had some fight in him. We saw the battle with Verstappen and it had a little bit of that old school flavor to it. Anytime Hamilton and Verstappen are near each other, the temperature goes up. You can feel it. The race feels more serious.
the 7-time world champion and the 4-time world champion separated by millimetres, nearly on the grass. Is there enough grip out there for Verstappen? And they're still continuing on. He brushes the gravel and he still won't yield.
But the end result was still 5th, and for Leclerc, 8th place from the front row is rough. There's no way around that. Whether it was pace, tire management strategy, or just the way the race came to them, Ferrari did not convert the starting position into the result. And that is a Ferrari question right now. They have speed, they have two drivers who can deliver, they have moments where the car looks dangerous, but are they turning those moments into full weekends? In Austria, the answer was no. Okay, fifth headline. McLaren had a solid day, but not a headline day. Oscar Piastri finished 4th, Lando Norris finished 7th. That's points for both cars, and Piastri especially did a nice job getting ahead of Leclerc and banking a strong result. But for McLaren, the championship defender, this is one of those weekends where solid is not bad, but solid is not enough to scare Mercedes. If you're McLaren, you're leaving Austria thinking, okay, we scored, we were in the fight, but we were not the main story, not by a long shot. And that matters because Mercedes is stacking these huge results. Russell wins, Antonelli gets another podium, Mercedes keeps looking like the most complete team on the grid. McLaren's good, they have pace, and they have two very strong drivers. But in Austria, they were not the team setting the tone. Sixth major story, Racing Bulls had a sneaky excellent weekend, and they have been for a little while now this season. Liam Lawson finished 9th, Arvid Lindblad finished 10th. Both cars were in the points, and they also took the fastest pit stop of the race with 2.03 seconds. That's the kind of weekend that a midfield team dreams about. It's not flashy like a win, and it's not going to dominate the highlight reel, but that's real execution. Qualify well enough, race clean enough, take opportunities, score with both cars, and have the pit crew operating at a high level. It's golden. It's how you build a season. And for Arvid Lindblad, grabbing that final point is another little marker. He is young, he's learning. And in a season with so many rookies and so much change, those little results matter. Arvid Lindblad is younger than half the F2 grid. You don't always need a giant breakout moment in your rookie season, but sometimes you just need to keep collecting evidence that you belong. The midfield in general, absolute chaos, and honestly, that's kind of good for the sport. Audi just missed out with Bortoleto and Hulkenberg in 11th and 12th. Audi's been sitting right at the back part of those points all season long and only actually got into the points once, which is why they have 2 points with Bortoleto. Alpine had Gasly in 13th and Colapinto in 15th, not great. Haas had Behrman 14th and Ocon in 16th, not great. Williams had Albon 17th and Sainz was a DNF. Aston Martin had Alonso 18th and Stroll was a DNF. It's a lot of teams leaving Austria with half answers. Some of them had pace in little windows, some of them had reliability problems. Some of them were just stuck in traffic and never really came alive. And that's why the back half of the grid's so interesting right now. There's points available, but you have to be perfect to get them. One clean qualifying lap, one good first stint, one well-timed stop, one rival having a bad day, and that can be the difference between a P10 and a P15. For Cadillac fans, this is also the mountain. This is the group Cadillac has to climb into. It's not just catching the midfield like the midfield's one slow blob sitting there. No, the midfield is fighting too. Racing Bulls is scoring, Audi is sniffing around, Haas, Alpine, Williams, Aston Martin, everybody is trying to move up. So the standard is moving while Cadillac is trying to catch up. That's why I make that, and that's what makes it so hard. But to bring it back to the front, Austria belonged to George Russell. Mercedes leaves with the win, another Antonelli podium. The championship lead still feels safe for Antonelli, but Russell is closing the gap. Verstappen leads with a very strong recovery drive, Ferrari leads with some frustration, and McLaren leads with points, but probably not satisfaction. Racing Bulls leads with one of the best team weekends on the grid, and Cadillac leaves with a lot of homework. So that's Austria, a sharp little Red Bull Ring weekend that gave us a proper winner, a late chase, messy Ferrari, and a strong Racing Bulls, and plenty to chew on before the circus rolls into Silverstone. And speaking of Silverstone, this is one of those weeks where we don't have a break between races, so now let's talk about the Great Britain Grand Prix.
5 red lights at Silverstone, and the British Grand Prix is go! They crawl from the line, and Oscar Piastri has the...
Okay, so the Great British Grand Prix at Silverstone. I know every race on the calendar gets marketed like it's special, like every race has a poster, that has a tagline, has somebody saying, oh, this is one of the most important weekends of the year. But with Silverstone, it's actually true. This is not just another stop on the schedule, this is one of the homes of Formula One. Silverstone hosted the first ever Formula One World Championship race on May 13th, 1950. This is where the modern championship began. Before all the Netflix, before the carbon fiber spaceships, before the hybrid era, before DRS, before all the global expansion, story of Formula One as a world championship starts at Silverstone. So when the team rolls into this place, they're not just rolling into another circuit. They're rolling into history. And the track itself has that old school soul. Silverstone started life as a RAF airfield during World War II. And you can still feel that a lot in its layout. It's wide, it's fast, it flows. It's not a little stop-start street track where the cars are crawling around walls and waiting for one brake zone. It's a proper high-speed Grand Prix circuit. This is Copse, Maggots, and Beckett's Corners. This is Stowe, Chapel. It's the kind of track where the car has to be brave and the driver has to be even braver. So there's some circuits where the lap looks technical. Silverstone looks alive. The car changes directions at high speeds. The aerodynamic load matters. Balance matters. confidence matters. And when a driver gets it right through those fast sections, it looks less like driving and more like flying. That's why Silverstone has such a special place in the sport. Not just historic because old things happen there, it's historic because the track itself asks modern Formula One cars a serious question. Do you trust your car? And for 2026, that question gets even more interesting because it's a sprint weekend under new regulations. Changes the rhythm a lot. You don't get the normal slow build where teams get to spend 3 practice sessions figuring out everything. You get 1 practice session and then it gets serious. Sprint qualifying on Friday, sprint Saturday, Grand Prix Sunday. So if you're a team that needs time to understand upgrades, or a team trying to fix reliability, or a team trying to recover from a rough weekend, Silverstone's not exactly handing you a warm blanket and a cup of tea. It's saying figure it out very quickly. And that matters for Cadillac, it matters for Ferrari, it matters for McLaren, it matters for everybody who's trying to respond from Austria. And then there's the crowd. Silverstone has one of the great atmospheres in motorsport. The British fans really show up. They're loud, they're knowledgeable, and they know exactly what they're watching. It's a crowd that understands when a driver commits through a fast corner. They understand when a lap is special. They understand when a team is struggling. They can smell momentum. And this year, that home crowd has a lot to care about. George Russell's coming in hot after winning Austria. Lando Norris comes in as home hero and a McLaren star. Lewis Hamilton comes back to Silverstone in Ferrari red, carrying all that history, all those wins, all those memories with him. And right now, he's driving pretty well. And then you have young British talent like Arvid Lindblad trying to make his own mark in front of that same crowd. You've got like 5 British drivers on the grid. So this is not just a historic weekend, it's a live pressure cooker. The British Grand Prix always feels big. This year it feels especially loaded. Mercedes are leading, Russell has momentum, Antonelli still has a championship lead, Hamilton and Ferrari need answers, McLaren needs to show that they can be more than just solid, and Red Bull and Verstappen are still lurking, they're still developing. And Cadillac needs to prove that Austria was a bad weekend, not a warning sign. It's the beauty of Silverstone. It takes everything happening in the season and puts it on one of the fastest, loudest, and most important stages in the sport. So yes, Austria gave us a lot of drama, but Silverstone is where we find out what that drama actually means. Who responds, who folds, who brings pace, who brings excuses, who handles the sprint format, who gives the British crowd something to roar about. That's what we're watching this week. Okay, so now that we have the stage set, let's get into the headline stories of the British Grand Prix.
To the race lead from pole position, Piastri is now compromised and Lando Norris knows it. The driver currently in third, trying to improve ahead. He can't get by, but he's...
Okay, so the major headlines going into the Silverstone Great British Grand Prix. Headline number 1, George Russell comes home with momentum. First big story, as you all know, Pit Lane Patriot is backing George Russell to win this championship. Russell just won in Austria, Russell's British, he's driving for Mercedes, and he is second in the championship. He's closing the gap to Kimi Antonelli, though that gap is still very real, and now he walks into Silverstone in front of that British crowd with the chance to make a real statement. And this is where it gets interesting, because Russell is not just fighting the rest of the grid, he's fighting the story inside his own garage. Antonelli is a championship leader. Antonelli has been the star of the season. Antonelli is a rookie phenomenon. But Russell is not going away. Austria was a reminder that Russell is not just here to be the experienced teammate while a young prodigy takes over the sport. He's here to win. He's here to lead. If he wins at Silverstone in front of his home crowd after winning in Austria, that title fight starts to feel a lot more real. Headline number 2, Kimi Antonelli has to answer. And I know that sounds crazy, Kimi Antonelli having to answer even though he's ahead 40 points in the championship and just finished on the podium. He took the fastest lap in Austria. This is Formula One. The bar moves fast. When you're leading the championship, third place can still feel like a warning sign if your teammate just won the race. So for Antonelli, Silverstone is about control. It's about showing that Austria was not Russell turning the tide. It was about showing that even on a historic high-speed, pressure-heavy weekend, he can still keep the championship calm. That's a big test. Silverstone is not quiet. Silverstone is not gentle. Silverstone is not a place where the pressure disappears. If Antonelli wins here, or even if he just beats Russell straight up, that is a huge response. Headline number 3, Lewis Hamilton comes back to Silverstone in Ferrari red. Still feels strange to say. Lewis Hamilton at Silverstone is one of the greatest combinations in modern Formula One, if not all of sports. This is his house. 9 British Grand Prix victories, 14 podiums at Silverstone. The crowd knows him, loves him, the track knows him, the sport knows what this place means to him. But this time he's not in Mercedes black or silver, he's in Ferrari red. And that changes the whole image, and Ferrari needs something. Austria was frustrating. Hamilton finished 5th. Leclerc finished 8th. It was kind of ugly. And for a team that started second and third, second row, it's not enough. So Silverstone becomes a big Ferrari test. Do they have the high-speed strength to fight? Can Hamilton summon some of that Silverstone magic? Can Ferrari put together a full weekend where the pace, the strategy, the tires, and the execution all line up? Headline number 4. Lando Norris is not coming to Silverstone as the fun British underdog anymore. He's not the guy people waiting to finally see break through. World champion. He won this race last year. He's a home hero. And now he has to walk into Silverstone with expectations. McLaren were solid in Austria, but solid is not the goal anymore. Oscar Piastri was 4th, Norris was 7th. That's fine, but fine does not scare Mercedes. Fine does not win championships. Fine does not take over a home Grand Prix weekend. So for McLaren, this is about proving they're still right there. Silverstone's fast corner should give them a chance to show what that car can do. And for Norris, it's about defending his home. The crowd will be behind him, the pressure will be with him, and McLaren needs him. Now for Red Bull, they need to keep the momentum that they built in Austria. Austria was a reminder that Max Verstappen does not need the perfect weekend to be dangerous. He started 5th, had trouble early in the weekend, and still finished 2nd right behind Russell. Classic Max. Now, Silverstone has not always been the easiest place, politically, emotionally, historically, whatever the word you want to use, but on track, Verstappen is always a factor. If Red Bull are even close, he's in the conversation. And this is why nobody at Mercedes, McLaren, or Ferrari can relax, because you can spend the whole weekend talking about British drivers, British fans, Mercedes momentum, McLaren at home, Hamilton in red, and then Max Verstappen can show up, put the car in the window, and ruin everybody's party. That is always on the table with the best driver in the world. Also, as I said, it's a sprint weekend, which means everything is a little bit more dangerous. It's not a normal weekend. Not a bunch of practice sessions, only one practice session. And that matters for everyone. So if you come in on Friday badly, you don't have forever to fix it. You've got one practice. And that matters for everyone, but especially for the teams who are trying to respond from Austria. Ferrari need to understand why Sunday slipped away. McLaren need to find more than a solid weekend. And Cadillac need a clean weekend after a double DNF. Cadillac have so many things that they need to figure out that we hope they can get a few of them down. Our boy Colton Herta, who will also be in Formula 2 racing this weekend, will need a huge reset. I want to see great things out of this guy. I have seen very little from him so far that would justify putting him in the Cadillac. I want to see him racing for a podium and not in a sprint in a Grand Prix, but I'll take a sprint because I haven't even seen him do it in a sprint. Everybody needs answers, and Silverstone gives them less time to figure out those answers because it's a sprint weekend. No slow build, no long warm-up. No, we'll figure it out by the end of free practice 3. And the biggest headline of all for us as Cadillac fans is we need a clean weekend. Cadillac are bringing an America 250 livery on the 4th of July weekend. Red, white, blue stars, USA on the car, the whole thing. And emotionally, that's awesome. It's an American team racing on a historic British circuit over a 4th of July weekend, trying to plant the flag in Formula 1. It's cool, but the car has to run. After Austria, the livery cannot be the story for long. The response has to be the story. Give Perez and Bottas laps, keep the brakes alive, give the engineers data, get through the sprint weekend cleanly, and finish the Grand Prix with both cars. That is the assignment. That is what we define as a successful 4th of July weekend for Cadillac. And those are your major headlines. Russell comes home hot, Antonelli has to protect the championship lead, Hamilton returns to Silverstone, Norris defends, and Cadillac has a lot of work to do and needs to pull off a clean weekend. And there you have it, folks. That is our Austria Grand Prix review and Silverstone Grand Prix preview. Join us next week where we will talk about all the events that occur over the 4th of July weekend, the 250th anniversary of America, and the first anniversary of my Formula 1 fandom. The movie came out exactly 1 year ago this past weekend, which marks my 1 year anniversary as a Formula 1 fan. So join us next week. I will see you then.